share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, so as we said today, we're continuing in chapter 10, and today we're looking at text 3, where we hear that Maharaj Yudhishthira is ruling over the whole planet. He's the king of the earth and the seas. So just remind us of the verse. Nishamya bhishmoktamata chitoktam pravritta vijnana vidhuta vibramaha shasasagaminda ivajitashraya paridhyupanta manujanuvastitaha. The translation: Maharaj Yudhishthira, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishmadev and Lord Shri Krishna, the infallible, engaged himself in matters of perfect knowledge, because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus he ruled over the earth and seas and was followed by his younger brothers. Before we go into the purport, just to remind us what was happening before, I was looking at Srila Prabhupada's lecture on today's verse, and Prabhupada was saying, he said, Maharaj Yudhishthira was thinking that for me, so many people have been killed, so I've become very, very much sinful. I'm not fit for sitting on the throne, such a responsible throne. But his misgivings were dissipated by the words of Bhishma. Bhishma, he is authority. Next to Krishna, Bhishma is one of the authorities. There are 12 authorities. They are the authorities of piety, religion. We cannot decide what is actually piety, religion. But if we follow Mahajan, great authorities, then certainly we are unmistaken. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, now all the Pandavas along with Krishna, they have come to Bhishmadev for taking his last instruction. So we were hearing about this previously, that at the end of Bhishmadev's life, he's lying on the bed of arrows, and Krishna has tried to relieve Maharaj Yudhishthira from his misgivings, but it didn't work. So he advised him to go and see Bhishmadev and hear from Bhishmadev, hear his last instruction. So that is what happened, just to remind us of that. So we go on to today's purport. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So who would like to read this first section of the purport, please? Do you have any volunteers?
I can volunteer.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Purport 1 out of 8. The modern English law of primogeniture, or the law of inheritance by the firstborn, was also prevalent in those days when Maharaj Yudhishthira ruled the earths and the seas. In those days, the king of Hastinapur, now part of New Delhi, was the emperor of the world, including the seas, up to the time of Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for reading, Mataji. So here it's mentioning this word that we've probably never heard before, primogeniture. I hadn't heard this word before, but yeah, as Prabhupada explains, the law of inheritance by the firstborn. And obviously we know the sons of the Pandavas were all murdered by Ashwatthama, and then Maharaj Parikshit was the only one in the family who left remaining, so therefore the throne went to him. And it's explaining here that in those days the king of Hastinapur was actually ruling over the whole world, as we'll hear more later in the purport. So then Srila Prabhupada adds after that Maharaj Yudhishthira's younger brothers were acting as his ministers and commanders of state, and there was full cooperation between the perfectly religious brothers of the king. So just wanted to highlight this point about cooperation, something that was very important, as we know, to Srila Prabhupada, so much so that he said, that famous quote that your love for me will be shown by your cooperation, after I'm gone. You're saying that how the devotees in ISKCON cooperate with each other after he's left, that will be an expression of our love for Srila Prabhupada, that we're trying to cooperate with each other and further the movement of Krishna consciousness. So another important verse regarding this point is in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 30, Text 8. This is where Lord Vishnu is addressing the Prachetas. So I'll just read the verse. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Varam Vrinidvam Bhadram Vo Yuyam Me Nripanandanaha Sauhardena Pritag Dharmas Tushtoham Sauridena Vaha. Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear sons of the King, I am very much pleased by the friendly relationships among you. All of you are engaged in one occupation, devotional service. I am so pleased with your mutual friendship that I wish you all good fortune. Now you may ask a benediction of me." You can see how very much the Lord himself was pleased by this cooperation, how important it is. The Prabhupada explains in the purport to that verse. He says, since the sons of King Prachina Barhishat were all united in Krishna consciousness, the Lord was very pleased with them. Each and every one of the sons of King Prachina Barhishat was an individual soul, but they were united in offering transcendental service to the Lord. The unity of the individual souls attempting to satisfy the Supreme Lord or rendering service to the Lord is real unity. In the material world, such unity is not possible. Even though people may officially unite, they all have different interests. In the United Nations, for instance, all the nations have their particular national ambitions, and consequently, they cannot be united. This unity between individual souls is so strong within this material world that even in the society of Krishna consciousness, members sometimes appear disunited due to their having different opinions and leaning toward material things. But actually, in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be two opinions. There is only one goal, to serve Krishna to one's best ability. If there is some disagreement over service, such disagreement is to be taken as spiritual. Those who are actually engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be disunited in any circumstance. This makes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very happy and willing to award all kinds of benediction to his devotees, as indicated in this verse. So again, we've seen just how pleased the Supreme Lord is by this cooperation between his devotees. And Prabhupada makes this interesting point that in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be two opinions because, everyone has the same goal. And Prabhupada is saying that there may be some disagreement over, in terms of the service, like in the details of the service, but the devotees are still in agreement with what is the goal of that service. So they may be doing it, they may think, oh, we should do it in this way, or we should do it in that way. Maybe it's better if we do it in this way. So in that way, there may be some discussion like that, and there may be difference of opinion in that way. But there's never any difference of opinion that what is the goal of, what are we actually trying to achieve with our service here. There's always the same goal in mind. Prabhupada says here, to serve Krishna to one's best ability. So I thought it was nice just to include this so that we can understand how it relates to us as well in ISKCON as a society of devotees. So then continuing on, today's purport, Maharaj Yudhishthira was the ideal king or representative of Lord Sri Krishna to rule over the kingdom of earth, and was comparable to King Indra, the representative ruler of the heavenly planets. The demigods like Indra, Chandra, Surya, Varuna, and Vayu are representative kings of different planets of the universe. And similarly, Maharaj Yudhishthira was also one of them, ruling over the kingdom of the earth. So basically here Prabhupada is making the point that Maharaj Yudhishthira is on the same level as these great demigods, even comparable to King Indra himself, you know, the king of the demigods. And Prabhupada is saying that Maharaj Yudhishthira is on the same level. So this is how great the devotee is, that they're even on the same level as the king of the demigods. And Prabhupada explains this further in his lecture, because if we just go back to the verse, look at the Sanskrit, where it said here, Shashasa Gam Indra. Then in Prabhupada's lecture, he says, here it is said, Shashasa Gam Indra Iva. Indra, the demigods, they are always protected by Vishnu, always protected. Whenever there is fight between the demigods and the demons, Lord Vishnu takes the side of the demigods. Therefore, Indra is Ajita Ashraya. He is confident that I am protected by Lord Vishnu, Ajita. Similarly, Maharaj Yudhishthira also, when he was assured that I am also protected by Krishna, I am also enlightened by the instruction of Bhishma, and my brothers, such big brothers, Bhima, Arjun, they will follow my instruction. In this way, when everything was incomplete, Vijnana Ruta Vibramaha, then he accepted the throne. This is monarchy, this is king. So again, it's explaining here, you know, that he's, just as Indra is confident that he is under the protection of the Lord, similarly, Maharaj Yudhishthira, he is now, after being enlightened, you know, by Bhishma Dev's instructions, now he's confident, you know, in Krishna's protection, that he's confident that he would do the right thing by accepting the throne, which he wasn't sure before. He was thinking, this is wrong. So many people had died in this battle, so it's not right. But now all of those misgivings are gone. So then Prabhupada is saying, this is, you know, this actual monarchy, this is how a king, you know, should be. So the king, you know, the king follows according to instructions of the Lord. They rule according to the instruction of the Lord, and therefore they're under the Lord's protection, and everything is how it should be. So then Prabhupada says, Maharaj Yudhishthira was not a typically unenlightened political leader of modern democracy. Maharaj Yudhishthira was instructed by Bhishma Dev and the infallible Lord also, and therefore he had full knowledge of everything in perfection. So again, now Prabhupada is comparing to modern day leaders, how they're unenlightened, meaning in terms of spiritual knowledge, because, you know, some of them, as we know, went to, you know, the top schools in the country and are very much educated. But in terms of spiritual education, you know, that education is nowhere to be seen. So in that sense, in the spiritual point of view, they're unenlightened, whereas Maharaj Yudhishthira was fully enlightened. So then this point about, it says here, the infallible Lord is mentioned many times. So Prabhupada gives this example from the past time, that when Shishupal was criticizing Krishna, Bhishma Dev supported Krishna, that what kind of brahmachari I am. He is greater brahmachari than me. I think I could not save myself if I were to keep myself amongst the young girls. No, but Krishna can do so. He is real brahmachari. So therefore, Prabhupada says, therefore his another name is Achyuta, which means to never fall down or infallible. And he says that every living entity is fallible. Brahma was fallible, what to speak of others, demigods. Brahma was attracted even by seeing the beauty of his daughter. Lord Shiva was fallible when he saw the beauty of Mohini Murti. So what to speak of others? And Indra, Chandra, they're all fallible. Only Krishna is infallible, all others fallible. So, you know, in the time of the Rajasuya sacrifice, when everyone is giving the highest respect and highest position to Krishna, then at that time Shishupal was criticizing But then Bhishma Dev is standing up for him that, you know, Bhishma Dev is known as such a great personality who is strictly following his vows, strictly following dharma, perfect brahmachari. So such a great reputation. But he is saying that Krishna is even greater than myself because he was amongst so many, you know, countless gopis in Vrindavan. He was amongst them, but he was never sexually agitated at all. So he is an even greater brahmachari, you know, than me. So he never fell down. He's infallible. And then Prabhupada is making the point that even the demigods are fallible at certain times, even Lord Brahma and Shiva. So only Krishna is infallible. And obviously, by extension, the spiritual masters who only follow Krishna and only preach what Krishna preached, then they are also, if they're preaching what is infallible, then they are also infallible. Okay, so we heard here in the purport, you know, he's being instructed by Bhishma Dev and the infallible Lord. So then now, Prabhupada is saying in his lecture, so Maharaj Yudhishthira, he was now convinced by the instruction of Bhishma Dev, by the instruction of Achyuta, in other words, Krishna, when he saw that if I sit down on the throne to rule over the world, I will be right in my position. And that is Maharaj Yudhishthira. Not only Maharaj Yudhishthira, all the kings who was emperor of the world, they were of the same nature. Therefore, they were called Rajarshi, king, but they are saintly person. Therefore, they are called Rajarshi. Raja and Rishi both combined together, Rajarshi. So all the kings in those days, they were all Rajarshis, not this rascal president. So again, Prabhupada is comparing to the modern day leaders. And at that time when he was giving this lecture, he was mentioning President Nixon in this lecture. And he's saying, you know, this for the Americans, this is your leader at the time, President Nixon. And he's saying, now look what's happened. You know, everyone has found out all the terrible things that President Nixon has done. And everyone knows about it now. So not these kind of rulers who do all these sinful things behind closed doors. No, but actual saintly rulers, Raja Rishis. When we have such rulers, then everything will be run properly in the kingdom or in the country, in the nation. So then Prabhupada continues in today's purport, this comparison to modern rulers. The modern elected executive head of state is just like a puppet because he has no kingly power. Even if he is enlightened like Maharaj Yudhishthira, he cannot do anything out of his own goodwill due to his constitutional position. Therefore, there are so many states of the earth quarreling because of ideological differences or other selfish motives. So again, this point Prabhupada likes to make, that we have the so-called United Nations, but they're not united because they have all these different differences of opinion, ideological differences, selfish motives, Prabhupada is saying. And he's also saying here, interesting point that, you know, we mentioned before, he was saying the modern rulers are unenlightened. They don't have any of this spiritual knowledge. But even if, for example's sake, even if they were to have this knowledge, Prabhupada is saying, even if they were enlightened, they wouldn't actually be able to do much because of, you know, how the constitution of the country is. You know, they can't just do whatever they like. You know, they're under the president, the prime minister, the rulers in these democracies. They're very limited in what they can do themselves. You know, is very different to the kind of monarchy that we had in these Vedic times, where, you know, the king, he gets the advice of the brahmanas, and then he makes the change, or he makes the law, or whatever needs to be done, he does it straight away. But in today's day and age, that's not possible. So that's why Prabhupada is saying that they're pretty much puppets, you know, in today's day and age. And obviously, there's the people would say, you know, the point that that's good. You know, they'll say that's good. You know, in previous times, the king can do whatever they like, but now they can't. The ruler, you know, they have to follow so many things. So isn't that a good thing? That they can't just abuse their power. So that's a different point, and that is obviously true, that we don't want rulers who can abuse their power. But here we are saying that in these times, these Raja Rishis, there was no question of them abusing their power, because they were genuinely following the instructions of the Lord. They were genuinely devotees, so there's no chance of them abusing their power. But obviously this is hard for people in today's day and age to understand, because they don't see any people like that. The only rulers they see are those who have these selfish motives that Prabhupada is saying. They see such examples, and that's all they think of when they think of a ruler. So they cannot imagine a ruler who is actually saintly, you know. It just doesn't happen in today's day and age. So yeah, so we can see that it's not very what's the word, practical. It's not even possible to do this in today's day and age. You know, we can't really go back to this kind of monarchy anymore. It's, you know, the world's moved past that kind of thing now. But anyway, Prabhupada is just making this comparison of how things were. But yeah, it's very difficult to have such rulers in today's day and age, as we know. So then Prabhupada is saying, you know, in contrast to the modern rulers, a king like Maharaj Yudhishthira had no ideology of his own. He had but to follow the instructions of the infallible Lord and the Lord's representative and the authorized agent, Bhishmadev. It is instructed in the Shastras that one should follow the great authority and the infallible Lord without any personal motive and manufactured ideology. Therefore, it was possible for Maharaj Yudhishthira to rule the whole world, including the seas, because the principles were infallible and universally applicable to everyone. So again, this point about following the infallible Lord or their representative and authorized agent, Bhishmadev. So in other words, the Lord and the spiritual master, these two we should follow. And that's all we need to do. We don't have to come up with our own ideologies, our own theories, our own motives, nothing like that. Just have to follow in their footsteps, and then we will also be perfect. Because why? Prabhupada is saying these principles that are passed down by the Lord and the spiritual master, they are infallible and universally applicable to everyone. So that's also very important, because we heard that you can't have actual United Nations, because we can't have all these things which are applicable to everyone, because, you know, all these nations, there's so many differences and so many needs and requirements which are different in different countries. So it's very hard to have principles that apply to everyone at all times, in all places, in all circumstances. Only if we follow these spiritual principles passed down by the Lord and his representatives can we actually have this situation where it's universally applicable to everyone. And then going back to the lecture regarding this point that he ruled the whole world, including the seas. So Prabhupada says, Maharaj Yudhishthira ruled over the earth. Now it is clearly stated, Paridvyupantam, up to the limit of the seas. That means all the seas, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, the biggest oceans, the Indian Ocean. That means the whole world. Here is the proof that formerly the emperors in Hastinapur, Maharaj Yudhishthira, he ruled over the whole world. There was only one flag, that is also stated. Up to the time of Maharaj Parikshit, there was no division. The whole world was Bharatvarsha, and the emperor of Hastinapur, they ruled over. So again, Prabhupada is making this point that there's only one ruler of the whole world, and he even says there's only one flag. Prabhupada likes to make this point in his lectures when he mentions the United Nations. He say, oh, you know, they've made this United Nation, but the only things that happened is that they've had more flags. So that means they're not becoming more united, they become less united, because there's becoming more flags, not less. But at this time, there was no such division. even though there was, you know, all these different kingdoms or different nations throughout the world, but they were all united under one common emperor. So, and we know the name of the world at that time was Bharatvarsha, named after Maharaj Bharat, who was ruling the whole world, and, you know, the world was named after him, Bharatvarsha, and then, you know, over time that came to mean just India. You know, now Bharatvarsha refers to just India, but at that time it was the whole world. And yeah, I just wanted to make a point on this, that again, people in today's day and age, like historians and scholars, different people like that, would say that where did you get this from? There's no evidence that there was one ruler of the whole world. There's no evidence that the whole world was ruled, you know, under one king. You know, we know in ancient times from our studies, you know, there's this kingdom in this place, there was this empire, there was this, there was that. And why are you saying that everyone was ruled by one king? So we understand, even though there's so many different civilizations all over the world, what we're saying is here that they were still doing their own thing, but at the same time, they all accepted the overall rule of the emperor of Bharatvarsha. But also, just from that point of view of a historian, like, we see that everything is not concrete, that everything is not set in stone, and every now and then they find, oh, we found this ancient city in this place that we never found before, and oh, we found this civilization is thousands of years old, but it seems quite advanced, and we find all these things, and then they have to change the whole story of what they know about history, and then at some point in the future something else will be discovered and it'll be changed like that. And similarly in science as well, you know, they you know, what is in, you know, one generation we may grow up in school to learn certain things, and this is described as fact, and then the next generation may grow up hearing that actually no, that's been disproved and something else is now. So basically, again, in science and history and all these things, nothing is set in stone, nothing is concrete. And this we understand the two different ways. I'm sure Prabhupada explains many times the two different ways of obtaining knowledge. There is the ascending process and the descending process. So we follow the descending process, that we accept the knowledge descends to us. It is given to us by Krishna and by the acharyas, by the scriptures, and we just accept it. And we think, you know, this is the knowledge, we just accept it and that's it. Very simple, very easy. Like we accept that this is the perfect knowledge. Everything we need to know is already given to us. So we don't need to try and through speculation and so many things try to find it out. But the scientists, they do the ascending process, that by their own effort, by their own endeavor, they try to understand everything. But they can only see a little bit of the picture. They can't see the full picture. So just to give an analogy of this, we can think that through the descending process that the devotees follow, it's like you have a jigsaw puzzle, and Krishna, he's giving us the whole puzzle, so we can see the whole picture. It's just there, so we don't need to put the puzzle together. But in the other hand, the scientists or the modern day historians and all these people, is like they find one piece of the puzzle and they put it there, and they think, okay, based on this piece, this must be the whole story of the world, of the universe, etc., etc. Then at some point they find another piece, then stick it together, and then the picture changes. Then, oh, actually, no, it's like this. Then again, one day they'll find another piece like that. But still, at every point, they only have a small part of the picture. And if they were to actually get the whole picture, then again, everything would be completely different. So it's kind of like that. They're kind of just stumbling in the dark, but they don't know what is the whole picture. Whereas Krishna has given us in the scriptures through the acharyas, he's given us the whole picture already. So we can actually see things for what they actually are. So there, and also over time, thousands of years, so much is lost. So, so it makes sense, that we would only know a small picture of the world's history based on what we've discovered, what we've found. Only what has actually been preserved nicely actually gives us information about the past. Many things have probably been lost that we will never be able to get, never be able to uncover. So it's kind of almost arrogant to assume that, yeah, we know everything about the history of the world and it must be like this. So it wouldn't be such a good argument to say, oh, and there's no evidence of this. But no, there's not, you haven't found any evidence, but that doesn't mean, it's not the case. But anyway, as devotees, we don't worry so much about that. We just accept this as perfect knowledge. Knowledge that comes from the perfect source is perfect. So, for us, we don't need to worry about that. But I just wanted to make that point. Just in case also we come across someone who says, this is rubbish, what are you talking about? And then we can try and explain in that point of view. Okay, so continuing today's purport. The conception of one world state can only be fulfilled if we can follow the infallible authority. An imperfect human being cannot create an ideology acceptable to everyone. Only the perfect and the infallible can create a program which is applicable at every place and can be followed by all in the world. It is the person who rules and not the impersonal government. If the person is perfect, the government is perfect. And if the person is a fool, the government is a fool's paradise. That is the law of nature. So again, Prabhupada is indirectly saying today's government is a fool's paradise. So, how can we expect the nation to be ruled perfectly like this? So yeah. Anyway, we've mentioned this point already about this being applicable at every place and can be followed by everyone. So it's all about the people in the government. What is their behavior? What is their character? And because today's day and age, their behavior, their character, we see in the news so many news stories. It's not hard to find examples of how their behavior and character is not up to the mark, is not up to scratch, and therefore, what can we expect from such people who are ruling us, who are governing us? But if the people are perfect, if they're Rajashis, as we mentioned earlier, if they're saintly rulers, then only can we expect perfect government. And Prabhupada is saying, so because of the government we have today's day and age, it's just to be expected. We're not going to be governed perfectly. That's the law of nature, Prabhupada is saying. And yeah, then he goes on to say that, there are so many stories of imperfect kings or executive heads. So I'm sure we've heard many examples of that. And Prabhupada says that therefore the executive head must be a trained person like Maharaj Yudhishthira, and he must have the full autocratic power to rule over the world. The conception of a world state can take shape only under the regime of a perfect king like Maharaj Yudhishthira. The world was happy in those days because there were kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira to rule over the world. So that's the end of the purport. But here Prabhupada is saying two things that, we mentioned earlier that even today's day and age, if such rulers were enlightened like Maharaj Yudhishthira, but they don't have the power to make the changes that need to be made. But Prabhupada is saying that therefore they need that full autocratic power. So that's one part that needs to be there. Then the second thing is then they have to be obviously trained in this spiritual knowledge like Maharaj Yudhishthira. So if those two things are there, then it actually works. And so if they're how can you say, if they're enlightened, but they're impotent, they don't have the power, then nothing will change. But if they're potent, if they have the power, but they're unenlightened, they will abuse, their power. So they need to be potent, they need to have the power, and they need to be enlightened. So if they have these two things at the same time. Okay, so, and ultimately Prabhupada is saying the world was happy. So what is the result of such perfect government? Is that the people are happy. Everyone is happy in the kingdom. There's nothing for the people to complain about. Even the great saintly kings, the Rajashis, they took this so seriously. They took their duty so seriously that even something happened like, like say someone's child died early, then they would be considered responsible, that it's your fault that my child died at an early age in your kingdom. Or if there's a great natural disaster, the people consider this is your fault. So anything that happens in the kingdom, they take it that this is my responsibility. And if it goes wrong, then again, it's my fault. Even to the point, we have this pastime where, someone, I'm just trying to remember the pastime where someone was, whenever a child was born in this house, immediately they vanished. The child just disappeared. And this kept happening. So they came and they complained to Maharaj Yudhishthira that this is happening. What is going on? This is happening in your own kingdom, that my children, they're being born and immediately just vanishing, disappearing. What's going on here? You need to, you're not protecting us. So Arjun got his bow out and he said, I will protect you, don't worry. Whoever's coming and stealing the children, I will stop them, nothing will happen. So Arjun goes there and he's there and he's got his bow ready and he's ready to shoot. But still, the child disappears and Arjun doesn't see what happened and he can't stop anything from happening. So again, he's ready. We also hear some, Arjun says that when I pull my bow out and I'm ready to shoot, then if I don't use it, then I will, he may say something like, I will take my life or something like that. So even here in this pastime, he was saying that I will protect your children, and if I can't, I will take my life. So now he's ready to take his own life. He's ready to commit suicide because he was unable to protect. But then Krishna stops him and says, hold on, don't be hasty. I will take you somewhere and I will show you what is actually happening. So then this is just to explain, this is in the Puranas. I forgot which Purana it comes from. I don't know if someone on the group has heard this before and knows the source. But anyway, Krishna and Arjun, they get on the chariot and actually, long story short, they go all the way out of the material world and they come to Vaikuntha, they come to the Lord, Lord Narayan. Lord Narayan, yeah. And then they find out actually he's the one who's been taking them, Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan, he is the one who's been taking the children. Why? Just to see Krishna and Arjun, just to get darshan of Krishna and Arjun. So that's all. And then obviously the children return like that. But it's so amazing that even Narayan or Vishnu, who comes from Krishna, in one sense is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But even Vishnu wants to see Krishna, even Narayan wants to see Krishna, and his great devotee, his pure devotee, Arjun. So in that sense, in those days, the king was considered responsible for everything, for the happiness of all their citizens. And they took it so seriously and made sure that everyone was happy. And the same thing in regards to Maharaj Parikshit's kingdom, his rule. We know under his rule, everything was perfect and everyone was happy until obviously then Kali started coming in, but while he was ruling, Kali wasn't able to do much. until, you know, Maharaj Parikshit left the world. But yeah, under these great kings, everyone was happy. So yeah, that's the end of the presentation. Hare Krishna. So yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Kirtika Mataji. And yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything, please feel free. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Nikhil Prabhu, for this fantastic presentation. Are there any questions or comments? Prabhuji, there is something in the chat. The story that you said was from Gita Mahatma. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Prabhuji, so I mean, everywhere in all the countries, we are seeing that there are no just rulers. I mean, they are not the Rajrishis that you have just described.
Yeah.
So does that mean that we don't have any hopes?
No, it's a very good question. Can only say what comes to mind for me. I don't know if anyone else has other thoughts, but I guess we can only focus on what we can change, isn't it? So generally, as obviously we had what was her name? Is it Tulsi Gabbard? That there was someone who's trying to go for presidency in America and they're a devotee. I think that didn't work out, but generally, you know, we're not so interested in trying to be the rulers and change it that way, but we're just trying to change what we can. And I guess I can just, because it's December, I guess I can just relate it to the marathon, that we're trying to change things by giving out books and changing people. We heard said something about, yeah, when the people are perfect, then the government is perfect, or then things are perfect. So we're just trying to change people, I guess, change their hearts by giving them Krishna consciousness, giving out the books, especially in December. But yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything at the moment. I don't know if anyone else has answer to that.
Yeah, Prabhuji. These are, at least we are trying to do something. Yeah. And I think that's why the fourth leg of Kali is still there, so that at least there is some truthfulness and there's some goodness that is still alive.
Yeah.
Any more questions or comments? If there are no more questions or comments, can I hand over to Arya Govind Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna. I mean, I was just thinking that there's still hope during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's golden period until the next 9,500 years. That at least Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's preachings will be still present, and then still people will follow. That means his prediction is every town and village will glorify his name. So that is the hope that for at least next 10,000 years, we have some hope that Krishna's names and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's names will protect us.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. So I mean, we definitely don't have hope in the political system or on the how the society is functioning, but at least on the spiritual front, on the effect of the golden avatar, we still have hope.
That's good. I hope we don't have to wait that long to go back to Godhead. We need to, Hare Krishna, we need to hurry up.
That's why Prabhupada used to say that, don't think of coming back. Even his devotees, he said, don't think of coming back. So yeah, Thank you so much, Prabhuji, on this wonderful presentation, as Mataji mentioned, on the different aspects of Lord Yudhishthira. I mean, how King Yudhishthira, how he was an ideal king, and then how he was ideal king just by following the footsteps of instructions of Krishna and his devotees. So the king not only ruled India, but ruled the entire world, and also including the seas. You know, I mean, all the creatures were kept happy, and then all the human beings, as Nikhil Gohil Prabhu was saying, that even the death was natural. I mean, any death will happen naturally, not unnaturally. Even if we ask in this current society why unnatural death is happening, so I mean they don't have answers. But kings during those times, they were answerable, and then they used to rule the kingdom in such a way that everything was natural, and then it was spiritually, progressive for all the classes of men. Thank you, Prabhuji, for enlightening us. I would like to ask everyone to unmute and then chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra once in glorification of Nikhil Gohil Prabhu.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna,
Prabhu ki jai. Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Nikhil Prabhu, for a wonderful class.